real and caused by humans. So I want you to know that things are happening below the surface, and my view of it is that we are either going to succeed legislatively or we're going to succeed as a result of failing legislatively. We're going to succeed in the next election cycle. I believe that both primary elections and then our general election on the presidential side are going to put climate front and center. And it's going to do it in two ways. First of all, there's just no doubt that people of your generation understand how urgent of a problem this is. And there's no doubt that whether you're for Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders or anyone else, that we have people who are really strong on this issue. And it's not just that the Republicans have weak candidates on this issue who don't have a strong program, it's that they're affirmatively out of their minds when it comes to climate. And here's, I think, the best way to understand this, because what the Republicans will say and certain conservatives will say is that, well, you know, this issue doesn't poll very highly. And what they mean by that is if you do, some of you have been involved in campaigns, if you do what they call an issues battery, if they list 6 or 7 issues, a lot of times people are going to not list climate as the #1 or 2 issue, because you got, on a day-to-day basis, more urgent priorities. Not to say it's not important to you, but if you're a mother or a father, or if you're a student, you've got like pocketbook issues. If you experience traffic, you've got transportation issues. You may or may not have the job you want. So people have more urgent needs. But what is happening with climate is sort of what happened with the old debate about teaching creationism in the schools, and the old debate about stem cell research, which is it may or may not poll as the #1 issue, but if you're on the wrong side of it, you're pretty much disqualified in terms of people being willing to consider you. And I think that there are a number of candidates who kind of seem appealing, like Marco Rubio and like others, but if you start to talk to them about climate, they really have such an untenable position that they will eventually be disqualified by moderate voters, and especially young voters, not just young Democrats, but young independents, and even some young Republicans seem to find climate denial totally untenable. We had the TPP and TPA, we had the TPA vote in the Senate a couple of weeks ago, and in the House just last night, or yesterday. And that is obviously causing a great consternation among Democrats. I'm opposed to TPA, and the main reason is this investor-state dispute resolution mechanism. I just think that it doesn't make any sense to allow an independent arbitration panel to determine whether law passed by Congress is violating an international trade agreement. That is upside down. You don't have to be a PhD in civics to understand that the laws that the Congress passes ought to stick. And certainly an independent arbitration panel comprised of attorneys who work for these international corporations should not have more authority in some instances than the Congress itself. But look, there are people who are for it, including my president, whom I totally support on most issues, and that's the way it goes. That's the strength of the Democratic Party, is that we have a robust discussion. We disagree when appropriate, but we come back together during the election cycle. Let me just talk to you about the coming election cycle and my own personal philosophy. I was introduced as like, I'm so glad not to be the youngest anything in particular anymore. But I was the youngest member of the State House, and I was the youngest party chair in the country, and I guess to the extent that that's useful to you, it's because I want you to know that we need you to become candidates now. We need you to become campaign managers now. We need you to be policy people now. The people at the legislature are extraordinarily influential. If you are a person who works for the Finance or Ways and Means Committee and you have a subject matter area, you can have tremendous influence in a positive way and nobody has to necessarily know your name. So just to be clear about what I mean, because I certainly hope we're not going to end up with 85 candidates. What we really need to have a strong Democratic Party is some of you, coming roaring out of this weekend deciding you're running this year. Some of you saying, I'm never going to run for office. That's not my thing. I want to be an operative. I want to run campaigns. That's the side of the shop I love. Or you know what? I'm policy. That's what I like. Or you can do all three at different points in your life. There are a lot of people who do that as well. But I want you to know it takes all kinds. And I think my main message for you is it takes your leadership now. Okay? So to the extent that, and I said you guys are a pretty wide range of ages, but to the extent that some of you feel like, well, it's a little early for me, I would just say we need you engaged in this next election cycle. We really do. And I also would say that you can win by losing. I don't think you should go out of your way to lose, but I don't think you should be afraid of it either. I ran for Congress and was not successful, and it was probably, and it wasn't on purpose, by the way, but it was probably one of the most fortunate things that happened in my career, and actually to me as a person. One of the things that I kind of contemplated when I lost that congressional race in 2006 was not just the kind of strategic and tactical analysis that you go through to try to figure out, why did I not succeed? You got to do that. You got to kind of debrief the thing, right? Figure out how you do better next time. But also a little bit of a gut check, a little bit of soul searching, and saying, hey, if the people rejected me, they may know something that I don't, or see something that I don't, or not see something in me that I see in myself. Whatever it may be, you got to actually think that through and say, they decided I wasn't ready. And so I spent some time thinking about how to get ready. And that was good for me. It wasn't fun for me, but it was good for me. And I want you to know that that it's okay to run and lose. It's okay to back a candidate that you believe in strongly, and maybe they don't come out on the most votes side of the equation. Again, never run to lose, but never be afraid of it either. And you really can be successful as a result, especially in Hawaii. I'll tell you, I'm looking at Stephanie, and I'm looking at some of the Democratic Party stalwarts in that corner in the back. We really know that in Hawaii, we're very forgiving of people who get knocked down and then get back on the horse. I mean, that is one of the things that we admire the most in people. And so don't be afraid to get knocked down. Don't be afraid to just go for it in this election cycle. And now I want to get a little bit more precise about what I mean. Sure, I think you should run for office. Sure, I think you should work at the legislature and all the rest of it. But I'll tell you that I think the coming Democratic presidential caucuses are probably the best single opportunity to organize the party, to build the party, and to get your organizing chops established. And let me just kind of tell you about my experience there. First of all, even if you are going to run for office yourself, the timing is such that that's a great time to build a little bit of a base, get to know people in your neighborhood, practice, basically, build a team, right? But I'll also tell you that it's our best time to actually grow the party membership. I really want to see an infusion, and unless we end up in the kind of pitched battle that we ended up in 2008, it's not going to be 50,000 people showing up at the caucuses like what happened with Hillary and Barack a while ago. But we ended up getting like 37,000 new members of the Democratic Party in one night. I mean, I remember getting phone calls. I mean, the lines were just nuts, and people who had run these caucuses for literally decades, they have their 300 or 400 little ballots. And I was calling them up, and I'm like, I think you need more than that, And they were like, well, okay, we'll double that. I was like, no, I think more than that. And so there were a lot of people running over to Kinko's and getting copies made. I remember one of my buddies who he's not that involved in politics, called me up and said, did I just vote for president on a Post-it note? I was like, yeah, you sure did. It's a very exciting process, but it won't be exciting unless you guys get engaged. And it won't be exciting unless we have a real contest. Contest in Hawaii is not a bad thing for the party. I think a contest of ideas is good, and I think a little organizing, a little tension is not a bad thing at all. And so one of the things that I'd like to see is the young Democrats taking a leadership role in growing the party in that particular fashion, getting new people to show up in caucus and vote for president and become a precinct officer and become a delegate to the state convention. That stuff is fun. That stuff is really important. And that's the way that you guys take over leadership of the Democratic Party. There was a time where it was, you know, Mike McCartney, you know, Chief of Staff of the Governor, David Ige, Governor Carol Fukunaga, you know, now on the City Council, Leslie Hara, Mazie Hirono, all of those folks were YDs, right? And so take your opportunity, but don't wait. Nobody's really gonna, I mean, maybe me and maybe Stephanie, but there's no like, okay, now is the time, you know, fit in here. You're gonna have to run against people, right? Because somebody is already filling whatever position you may want. That's okay, right? You may lose the first time. You may beat the people the first time, and that may even be worse, right? Because then everyone's going to be salty at you, and you got to do a lot of work, and all the rest of it. But remember, contests are good. Friction is good. That's the fun part. So don't be afraid to, you know, I used to play a little basketball, now I watch basketball a lot. Keep your elbows high, like let's go, let's mix it up. This will be fun. But you guys are going to have to kind of decide that you're ready to put yourself at the center of next year's political races in Hawaii, and that's really what I want from you. And I'll just say one final thing before opening it up to questions, and it could be questions about just anything you want to talk about, policy or politics or anything. I have your back, which is not to say I'm going to back you all running against all my friends who are precinct chairs and such. What I am saying is that I have your back in terms of anything you want to do that is in public service. You reach out to me and I will see if I can give you advice, if I can give you support, because I really think that, you know, as our congressional delegation goes through a transition in leadership and in generations, as we have a new governor, as we have a new lieutenant governor, as we have changing leadership in the state senate and the state house, that one of my roles is to try to help everybody to succeed. And I think that young Democrats are really central to that. And so please do let me know how I can be helpful. There is a tendency sometimes for people who have had some success in politics to try to you know, suck all the oxygen out of the room and prevent anybody from becoming competition. That's not going to be me. I really want you guys to be as successful as possible, and I'm going to do anything I can to make sure that that happens, because that's the only way we're going to continue to have a strong Democratic Party, and not just to win, but to work on all the things that matter to all of us on our shared values. So I think what I'll do is end there and get an iced tea while questions come.